participating in disinformation about UFOs.
You might even ask, how does a man with John Lear's background and prominence become so actively involved in UFO investigations? We find out during an interview with award-winning broadcast journalist George Knapp of KLAS-TV in Las Vegas.
3 years ago, when I had a friend of mine come through Nellis Air Force Base who I had flown with in Laos. I flew for a private company over there, and he flew for the ambassador. He was a Raven, and really knew him very well. He came through here about 3 years ago, and in the process of asking him where all he had been in the past few years, he mentioned he was at Bentwaters. And Bentwaters was, of course, the site of a very famous flying saucer landing in 1980. And I said, oh, well, that's supposedly where that flying saucer landed. And he said, no, John, not supposedly. It did. I didn't see it because I was confined to quarters, but I will give you the names of the guys who did. And gave me General Gordon Williams, Colonel Chuck Halt, Major Ted Conrad. He said, if you ever see these guys, they'll tell you. And I said, you mean all this stuff is true? There are aliens and flying saucers? And he said, I hope to tell you. So that's when I set out on this thing to find out what the bottom line was. And so what I've been talking to you about over the past couple of years is what I keep finding out. And we're getting closer and closer to the truth.
Lear's not the only one formerly with the government intelligence community. Bill Cooper, a former Navy man, describes the incident that turned him onto UFO research during a subsequent interview with Knapp and Lear.
In the Navy, I had an occasion to actually see what they call a UFO, only this was certainly not unidentified. The only thing that I could tell about it that was unidentified is we didn't know who was flying it. I was on a submarine on the surface between Pearl Harbor and the Portland, Oregon, Seattle, Washington area.
What did it look like? What did you see?
It was a huge, absolutely, without a doubt, metal machine which had been built by someone somewhere, came up out of the water, tumbled end over end, and went up into the clouds. It was low cloud cover that day. There were 3 personnel on the conning tower. It was myself, the starboard lookout, and the officer of the deck. His name was Ensign Ball.
You all saw it?
Yeah, all saw it. The captain was called to the bridge. He came up, followed by the chief quartermaster, who brought a 35mm camera. The craft, or another craft that looked exactly like it, came back down out of the clouds, again tumbling end over end, went into the water. And the whole thing was incredible. I was absolutely stunned. But it was obvious that it was metal, it was a machine, it did not glow like the normal accounts of...
meteors or something like that?
No. And pictures were taken. When we arrived back in port, we were debriefed by Office of Naval Intelligence officer who basically the gist of the debriefing was is you didn't see anything and you're not going to talk about anything, and if you do, you're going to be in deep trouble. So that was the end of that.
Now, both Lear and Cooper are now conducting their research in the open, exposing themselves to whatever consequences may come their way. Here in our studio, we have a guest who for many reasons can't be identified. We'll call him by his pen name, Richard K. Wilson. He has compiled an extensive collection of research material and is the author of the book, The Secret Treaty. Now, Mr. Wilson, how did you get started in this research?
It happened about 20 years ago. I began to notice the presence of discs and read all the literature and started talking to some intelligence people looking at documents that came by. And I started to uncover, together with a bunch of other people, quite a lot of data regarding what appeared to be quite a large cover-up.
Mr. Wilson, I have 4 pages of different names, codes, starting with Majestic, and 4 other various pages that go on from there. Could you give us the chronological order of how some of these agencies, one became the other perhaps, or what exactly some of their meanings may be?
In 1947, when the Roswell crash happened, the United States put together a group of people to go and look into this. They weren't sure whether they came from the Germans or they came from the Soviets, where they suspected some additional technology was being developed after the war. During the war, the United States and the Soviets, as well as the Canadians, acquired disk data. In 1947, there was a specific incident where the radar at the Four Corners area in the Midwest took down a disk, thereafter known as the Roswell crash. On that disk, the United States government discovered both alien bodies of a reptilian species and also the bodies of Air Force pilots. This in itself, besides the technological surprise, was enough to keep them and the data secret. In September of 47, Truman passed the National Security Act in order to hide the activities of the government, the Central Intelligence Agency, and the alien problem. In 1948, Project Sign was established after a top-secret estimate of the situation was prepared. General Hoyt Vandenberg, after reviewing the report, ordered it destroyed. Not all copies were destroyed. One still survives. Project Sign was designated as Project Grudge in December 1948, with a public version to be known as Project Blue Book. The liaison between Project Grudge and Project Blue Book was Captain Edward Ruppelt. 1949 was a time period in which alien craft were seen hovering over sensitive nuclear installations, especially in New Mexico. In December 1950, they established a unit called IPU, Interplanetary Phenomena Unit, which established operationally scenarios to be able to deal with the increasing problem of crash disks and aliens. By this time, they had approximately 16 crash disks and 65 alien bodies, one of which was live, and they had held in a facility. They termed the alien EBE, which means extraterrestrial biological entity, a name coined by Dr. Detlef Blanc, who was also a member of the original study group. The government has pursued various scenarios, some of which are being implemented at